So Mercedes has typically been more luxury focused than sport focused, which has resulted in their buyers being more the people that are receiving their first AARP subscription than people that are graduating college. However, Mercedes has put a lot of focus into their AMG and performance lines, and it's shown really, really well. With things like the C63, the E63S wagon, and the GTR, Mercedes has real performance pedigree now. So, can we expect C63 type performance to trickle down into the C300? Today we're going to find out. So before people started blowing up their product lines with a car sized to match every mood that a person can possibly have, the Mercedes C300 in the C-Class was the entry-level Mercedes. However, the 2019 C300 is far from introductory. So with the Mercedes sedan lineup, people's main complaint is that you've seen one, you've seen them all, which really I'm not mad about, especially with this C-Class Coupe. It's extremely beautiful. The proportions are fantastic. And if you really, really need to tell the difference between your cars, all you need to do is look at the headlights. The entry-level C-Class is going to have one LED bar. The mid-grade E-Class is going to have 2 LED bars. And the top-of-the-line S-Class is going to have 3. So there you go. Also, the front of the C-Class is very handsome. It's very aggressive and much more aggressive than it has been previously. You have nice intakes up front. In some, you have an optional splitter up front. We have a nice brushed aluminum one kind of right here. And then depending on what trim you get, it's reflected in the grille. So if you option up to the more AMG and the more performance oriented Mercedes, you get kind of chrome finished spindles in the grille. It looks really good. And then, as I mentioned, as we get into the profile of this car, the proportions are exceedingly beautiful. You have classic Mercedes elegant styling. You get kind of a fastback almost shape with the coupe, and it's beautiful. One of my favorite looking vehicles on the market today. But one of the cool things that you get is you get 17-inch wheels as standard, and you get some of these cool kind of twisty door handles. So then as we move to the back of the car, you can see that the elegant swooping Mercedes styling has continued here. We have beautiful LED taillights as well. One of the new additions for 2019 is the chrome bar that kind of makes its way across the side of the trunk. This is very reminiscent of the S-Class in previous generations. And then of course, as you move down, the typical Mercedes rhombus-shaped exhausts are here as well. The outlets are built into the bumper and they are not directly connected to the tailpipe, which is something that I don't love, but you kind of sacrifice for this style. Now moving on to the interior, this is where Mercedes has always shined. You can really tell that the design is pinnacle, especially with this 2019 generation. You have a revised infotainment screen. It descends into this beautiful string of pearls vents, and really just looking at the center stack, you can feel how premium this thing is, especially compared to the competition. Everything looks fantastic. The ambient lighting, the leather, the materials, the stitching, everything is very, very expensive looking. I do love the circular contrasting vents with the brushed aluminum. The steering wheel is extremely handsome. The seats are comfortable. Heated seats are not standard. You can option heated seats for about $1,000. I would absolutely do it. They are definitely worth it, especially in Wisconsin. The 8.4-inch infotainment screen is new for 2019, and it is tablet style, but it does look really, really good. Also, you can option a panoramic roof in the sedan options. It's about $1,000, just over, and it's really more like a longer front sunroof and then a second sunroof in the rear seats. Now, this being the coupe, you don't have a whole lot of room in the back seat, but if you option for the sedan, you will get a more segment leading, or at least segment competitive, rear seat legroom. Now, going back to that 8.4-inch infotainment screen, it is controlled by Mercedes' typical command system. You can option Apple CarPlay and Android Auto for about $350, and a bunch of other things as well. But one of the exciting things is, for 2020 and incoming models, Mercedes is working on an artificial intelligence option to make it extremely immersive and make the car be able to predict really anything that you want and take care of it. Mercedes, I'm cold. It'll turn your heat warmer on, it'll turn the heating up, it'll take care of everything for you. Additionally, this isn't new, but Burmester sound system looks and sounds fantastic. And $3,300 will get you the driver assistance package, which will give you blind spot monitoring, keyless entry, Distronic with steer assist, cross traffic alert, pedestrian detection with emergency braking, and active lane keep assist. So all that stuff is great, but that's stuff that you can look up on a spec sheet. So what you really are here for is how this thing drives. So let's get behind the wheel and take this thing out. Hey guys, we are behind the wheel of the C300 Coupe. First thing I want to talk about is the powertrain. This is Mercedes turbocharged 4-cylinder. 2 liters, going to give you about 241 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. These numbers are actually stronger than the BMW competitor when this thing came out. Now with 2019, BMW has completely done away with the 328. The now entry-level 3 Series is the 330, which has a little bit more power, so that puts it above this thing. However, this thing could be ready for a refresh in the next couple years, so watch for that thing to come out with even more power than the BMW. It does compete very, very directly with the segment. Mercedes does a fantastic job with just their overall packaging. Their interiors are probably second to none. So with those power figures, this car is a little bit underpowered compared to the segment. And by underpowered, I mean it's like a whisper shy of what the Audi is producing. It's a whisper shy of what the new 3 Series is producing, but those are all brand new cars. The Audi came out in the last 2 years or so. The BMW is coming out for 2019. So when this thing gets refreshed and has a new generation, you can expect to see a little bit more power from this 2-liter. Now the factory reports 0 to 60 in about 5.8 seconds. It's a little wet, but we're gonna see what we can do here. 4-wheel drive Mercedes 4MATIC puts power down. It pulls really, really strong between 4,000 and 6,000 RPM. I was actually just in another AMG variant of a Mercedes this morning. Mercedes does a really good job of pulling really high and got a nice high revving engine. There's a lot of torque and power down low. The turbos spool up really well and they give you a nice thrust in the back, pretty close to idle. But yeah, once you get to the top, or once you get to about the middle of the rev range, you really start to feel a lot of that power that you're used to. Now I'm talking about how there's not really much lag, if all. Oh, this thing dives in. Wow, that held on really, really well. Peak torque is about 1,300 RPM, and you really feel it. This thing pulls right out of the gate, which is, you know, kind of surprising. A lot of the bigger AMGs that I've driven, the CLS, the E-Class, the big, heavier AMGs, they thrust really hard, but they don't feel as quick and darty and nimble. This being a smaller C-Class, even with a little bit less weight to it, it really feels a lot more agile than what I'm used to. And you know, the chassis is really well refined. It's, like I said, it's wet and I'm kind of tossing it around corners. This thing actually is holding on immensely well. Just dive it in, chuck it into a corner there. The 4MATIC all-wheel drive does a fantastic job at just keeping this thing planted and level. There's no wheel slip, even in the wet here. Fantastic job. One thing to mention also is the transmission. This is a traditional torque converter automatic. It's not a dual clutch, but I don't really think it needs it. For 2019, they added 2 more gears. It is now up to a 9-speed. The previous generation, the previous year was a 7-speed, and this adds about 2 more gears. It's really, you know, quite responsive. I have it in sport now. It does everything that I wanted to. If I really want to, I can switch over to manual mode, and I have nice aluminum paddles behind the wheel. They're wheel mounted, which is just fine. But really, really snappy transmission. I think it does a really, really great job for not being a ZF and being a traditional torque converter automatic. With the 9-speed transmission, you can expect to get about 23 mpg city and about 32 highway. So it is pretty good. It's efficient. Some power down, turbo spool midway up, pitch it into this corner. Oh, it hangs on. It's tight. I don't know if it's quite as tight in the chassis as the BMW, but it does a fantastic job of holding on. We got 225 tires. They do a fantastic job of gripping. There's really not much body roll, and this thing just handles incredibly well. I'm very surprised. Much better than the Audi. I think it's definitely on par with the BMW, which of course is the benchmark in the segment, so it's a fantastic compliment to this Mercedes. Really, really great job. This thing is a joy to drive. Now, of course, I'm driving this thing kind of hard and I'm pitching it into corners and I'm, you know, kind of driving this thing more towards the limit because that's what you people want to know. But, you know, you can tailor it back. You have a dynamic button right here, hard button next to the command wheel. You have, looks like 5 different drive modes. You've got Eco, Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus, and Individual. Obviously, Individual can be very tailored to what you need. And, you know, ultimately, it does a fantastic job. I would probably leave mine in Sport most of the time. I believe Sport Plus turns off traction control, and of course it's wet today, so I like to have a little bit of computer assistance, specifically seeing as this isn't my car and I haven't spent all that much time in it. But overall, this thing does a fantastic job. I was really expecting to get in this car and just be like blown away by the interior and the build materials and the design, and I really am. This is far and away the most interior you get for the money. But you know, I was really just I'm kind of floored with with the performance of this thing. And this is the base. This is the C300. There's nowhere to go but up, and this thing does incredibly well. I mean, it's a Mercedes product, and I always associate that with AMG, and it's just, kind of a straight line, German muscle car. It's just, power, rah, rah, rah. But this thing is well sorted. The chassis is really, really responsive and compliant to my inputs. The steering is tight and aggressive, or not aggressive, but it's accurate and precise. I'm gonna pitch it into this corner right here, going at a decent speed, and it's just gonna hang on. Oh yeah. So ultimately this thing is a fantastic little car. I mean, it's a Mercedes, and it's an incredibly luxurious and beautifully designed vehicle, but it's nice to know that you have that bit of performance and that bit of, that kind of fizzy bit that kind of complements the luxury and the prestige of the 3-pointed star. So ultimately this is a fantastic little car. So thank you, International Autos, for hooking this car up. I had a fantastic time driving this thing. If you like this video, go ahead, leave a comment, subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
I had a dream I could buy my way to heaven. When I awoke, I spent that on a necklace. I told God I'll be back in a second. Man, it's so hard not to act reckless. To whom much is given, much is tested.